digital transformation as a tool for organizational agility and performance. And this will be treated by one who is the Digital Channel Senior Manager at MTN, Mr. EMMANUEL AGBEKO GAMOR. Please, let's appreciate him while he comes up with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
When I saw this topic, I realized that most of the people who are speaking will be speaking from a place of authority. So they have the CEO title, the budget. So instead of me starting, I'll ask a few people how the session has gone so far, whilst we wait for people to come down. So when I come to you, please say your name, say where you work, and how you feel about the session so far. Hello, sir. How are you?
My name is Eli Afekwa. I work with ECG. I think so far it's been great. I think this year the speakers have been wonderful, and we've learned a lot. The styles are different. You can just look at each of the speakers, and as project managers, you have to gauge what kind of style they are using, and it's refreshing. I think that's what I can say so far. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. A round of applause for them. Good morning, ma'am. Please, your name. It's okay. So please say your name and what you think of the session so far.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Mami Nyakwa. I think that this is my second time of being here. Last year I was there, and this time I'm here. And I think it's awesome. And I'm looking forward to hear more things that I can apply to my life and my business to grow. Thank you.
Before you sit down, what one thing do you want to learn from digital from my session? Is there anything you're curious about?
I know some of the digital tools, but I'm not using them effectively. So I really want to know how I can use it effectively to bring change to me. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for her, please. So now I'll pick on the people who are talking whilst we are talking. Please, the gentleman, good morning, sir. Your name, your company, the position, and how you found the conference so far.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Kweku Abuaje. I work with BOST. I'm a project manager over there. So far, it's been very informative, and we've learned a lot. I believe that from here, we are going to implement a number of the things that we've even learned from this conference.
What do you want to learn from the digital section?
From the BOST side as well, we are looking at how to reach out to many people as well through our digital platforms. So far, we started the journey somewhere last year, and I'm believing and hoping that by this session, we'll learn how to be able to even do much more than we've done in the past as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A round of applause for the gentleman. So the last lady before I bring Ato, today Ato and I are sharing the MC salary. Ato, Yebechapa. Good morning.
Oh, is it me?
Yes, please. So for those who are having a meeting or a caucus within a meeting, how are you? Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Hannah Ifriye from Total Energies.
Nice. Okay. What do you think of the conference so far?
I'm very insightful. I'm learning a lot. I was just talking to a colleague that sometimes the bureaucracy doesn't help us. So I've learned a lot from the BOST and then the ECG.
Okay.
And I think that is something that those of us in the multinational, we have to combine what we know with what is implementable. So at the end of the day, it wouldn't be a lot of processes and procedures, but action on the ground. So I'm learning a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you raised a really important point. A round of applause for her, please. Not so much about the process and procedures, but implementation, right? So there's one last lady I wanted to ask, and then hopefully we can get started. So the lady in glasses wearing brown. What's my time?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Krantima. I work at the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. What am I supposed to respond?
You see why I timed
here. It's my first time here, and I'm very glad I came. It's
You're
been
very
very
welcome.
insightful. I've learned a lot. It's been very practical and relatable. And I'm looking forward to your presentation as well.
Cool. Thank you. So the question that I had for you, what do you want to learn from digital tools?
I'm curious to see what's out there because I work in a government institution, which is not very, yes, so I'm just curious to learn what's out there and how we can implement.
Okay, thank you. Please, a round of applause for all of you, each and every single one of you. First off, you all look amazing. A round of applause to the organizers, the speakers that took time to come here. Really excited. So caveat, the first time I heard about this organization, my manager, Dario, shared an email. He said, there's this really awesome organization, and he's been invited to speak, but he'll be in Italy, so would I want to come and share? I said, well, but we have, and I think most of you who were here yesterday, our big man, William Tete, come share. And Dario said, but there's a perspective that he would love to share with you guys. And I asked him, what's that perspective? And he said, digital. Then I got nervous. Why do you think I got nervous? Oh no, Dario's fine. The MTNers know who Dario is. Well, the reason I got nervous is because a lot of people have different perceptions of what digital is. And everybody uses the word digital as a solution for a lot of different things. So I'll do two things. One, I would start a few slides based on the topic that Frank gave me. And then the second thing, I would share authentically from my position, which I think may be more powerful than the tools about digital itself. And so there'll be two presentations in one. You guys, this is your lucky day. But I'll start, let's start with the first slide. Please go ahead. So this is the topic Frank gave me. He said, digital transformation as a tool for organizational agility and performance. And I was shocked. I was like, this is a mouthful. This says a lot. But I was also excited because I said, okay, cool. If I saw this topic and I was meeting project managers, how would I tackle it? So next slide. I said first, let me bring my credentials. Let me show you people how many schools I've gone to, what projects I've done. How can I justify my inclusion in this conversation, right? That's okay. Well, if I say Harvard, you'd understand and appreciate the business school, right? They made a business out of teaching and knowledge. Cool. If I share with you guys Google Africa Connected, it would resonate. Why? Because Google search is so ubiquitous. If you're asking yourself any question, you don't go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, you don't go to a library, you literally type the word Google. And before the company presented itself, none of us even knew the word Google existed. Then again, I said, okay, what else can I share with you guys? Well, the framework for my learning. So I share or think with a modified Socratic method. So the reason I spoke to those before everybody else came in and said there are slides with a discussion is that with each of the topics that I'm able to present, the more feedback you give me, the more we can dive in and it can be relevant for you. And that's what Socrates did. Socrates believed that having conversations could unearth wisdom, and then by those ideas, we could change the world. So I said, hey, these are big people. Let me show them that besides the beads and the kaftan, I've also done some. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So there's a playbook. David Elroy just put this playbook together. Over the past couple of years, it's been one of the biggest authorities on digital transformation. Ato and the organizers have given me shy of 25 minutes in order to share with you. And it won't be possible for me to go deeply into what a digital transformation means. But also it won't be fair because for each of your companies, each of the departments and divisions, digital transformation may look a little different. For marketing, of which most people start their digital transformation, it's almost like, how do we use social media? Where's the website? For some of you in consumer now, and I just came back from our conference in Cape Town, it now looks like, how do we make more money with less? How do we convert from what we're doing? With my irreverent and very good friend Dubik Mahama, digital looks like, how can ECG now give home loans? And you heard him say that. So as I was listening, I was like, wow, digital can mean so many different things to so many different people. So how do we unlock that? So for all of you here, those of you online, those of you listening, I will tease out a few thoughts, but I would love for you to check out this book. Wherever you sit as a project manager, talking to some of you in energy, some of you from BOST, Total Energies, some of you from my company, MTN, there's a chapter that helps you unpack that. Today's session, however, I'll touch on a small but most important part. People assume that digital is about the platforms and the technology, but really it's about the mindset. Next slide, please. This is probably what you guys invited me here for. So this concept and this table is pretty simple, but for most of us who study digital, those of us who study innovation more broadly and the use of digital, you're looking to have a couple of behaviors once you implement that. Some of them look like what? Access. So how do you make your information, your services, your products accessible? And for us, please, this one, MTN is paying me to say this. The access strategy to be faster and be everywhere, because we're everywhere you go. But their money is finished. So now, access is incredibly important. Now, when you ask me, how do I make people accessible to your business and products? Then I have to map out what tools, based on budget constraints, based on customer empathy, make sense for that. And the challenge with that is it looks very different for somebody living in Kumasi. It looks very different for somebody living at Ridge. It also looks very different from somebody living in Estonia versus somebody living in Virginia, United States. Engage. Part of engaging means that we create value. And so when you're thinking about digitizing and whatever solution you have in that transformation is, how do you offer value? And that engagement is a two-way street. So that's why I came down to walk with all of you to get a sense. What do you want out of this? Customize. How many of us consider ourselves, maybe this is, and I apologize, this is the American in me. America likes to categorize people. Baby boomers. Please, if you know what that is, raise your hand. Are you a baby boomer? Hey, you are not baby, wait, oh. Okay. Millennials. It doesn't resonate. Okay, cool. All right, so okay. So 40 and over. Those who are older than 40, please raise your hand. I'm not aging you, please. Okay. 40 and over. So it looks like what? 1/5 of the room. 40 and over? Yeah, there are more of you, right? It looks like almost half of the room. Okay, so 28 to 40. 28 to 40? Millennials. All right. Gen Zs. Working class but younger than 28. Interesting. And the reason why I share that is the way that each category engages is incredibly different. I can use Microsoft, for example. So some of the baby boomers, the way that they work, the introduction of Microsoft is very different than what Microsoft is doing now with their Power Apps. So most of you are professionals at using Excel. Most of you Word. When you guys were using your laptops and you said, hey, my competence, I can use Excel, PowerPoint, Word. It's probably on your LinkedIn. Now Gen Z, when they come to you, they don't say they can use Microsoft Word and Excel. They say what? ChatGPT, generative AI, social media compliance, low code, no code, customization. And that's incredibly interesting, right? Back on that slide. Connect. Part of what we've realized is that for each and every single one of us, we're not just doing products anymore, we're creating customer experience. And the customer has to be part of that conversation. So digital transformation needs to be a part of that. Collaborate. It's incredibly key. Later on in the slides, I'll share a bit more on what that looks like. But there's a principle called network effects, where there's more value in something that has more participants within that. And we've seen a lot of social media companies go from being startups to be unicorns and billion-dollar valued companies because of network effects. Next slide, please. DJ, please, you have to play my song. So the previous slide was me coming into this and trying to predict what would give value for all of you based on what Frank said. Then halfway through the presentation, I changed my mind and I said, actually, the value all of you would probably get would be how do I introduce tools from a millennial's perspective in your day-to-day? I looked at the demographic of people here. I can talk about high level, and most of the speakers here would say that. Or I can speak to project management from a place of authority. But how many of you can speak of project management from a place of influence? Somebody asked a good question here. She said, and I'm summing it up, if ECG wasn't a monopoly, if your workers didn't feel like they had to listen to you, the CEO, how do you motivate them to success performance? And that's really hard. My previous job, I was in a place of authority. Now I'm in a place of influence. So I wanted to share a few things in order to get that started. DJ, please, are you there? Please, everybody get up. Please, if you're able to, please, on your feet, please get up. Yes. With swag. Oh, we're in Ghana.
Daniel,
Stretch the right leg. That's right. Move your shoulders. Hey. 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 Yes. That's right. Stretch your left hand. Put it down. Your right hand. Put it down. You dey feel the vibe. Energy. You dey feel the vibe. Oh, guys. You dey feel the vibe. Thank you. Energy. You dey feel the vibe.
I dey feel the vibe, bro.
That's it. Please have a seat. Thank you so much. DJ, cut the music. Cut the music. Cut the music.
We should have had more. We should.
Ato. We should have had more. Excellent. So the next slide. So I wanted to do this to reintroduce myself to you, because most of us introduce ourselves with digital from an academic setup. With me and the people I work with, we need to make digital relatable. And we need to be able to make it transformative, and we need to attach it to ideas. So now I'm reintroducing myself. Forget the big language, forget the academic part. These slides now are little basic parts that make digital transformation relatable to what you do. So every day I go to work, this is the mindset I have for digital transformation. And I hope this last 10 minutes would give you a semblance of how you would apply it based on your company and your division. Next slide, please. A lot of us use fancy words for digital. There will always be fancy words. At a point, the abacus was the technology there. At other points, it was what? TI plus Texas Instruments. Some of us were not allowed to use that at WAEC. Can you imagine? Elective maths. The worst part about that was, in other countries, they were allowed to use it, because the type of questions they ask, the calculator can't solve it for you. The basics of digital transformation is getting ideas across. And I use this slide to tell you that even when you're in a digital transformation space, conversation is the best for context. Voice nuance, feelings, empathy. When you're building your digital transformation tools, speak to your customers. When you're creating a digital transformation team, speak with your team. Don't give off instructions. Similarly, most of us here, as project managers, we do this a lot. Emails. We don't send emails to communicate. We send emails in case something went wrong for reference. They laugh at the back. Kindly read this. Pair attached. As discussed. Absolutely. And we take some of these things for granted because digital then is an expression of our behavior. So what are you solving for? If you're solving for it to be a reference, then we'll be sitting with multiple emails that are not answered to. We're sitting with emails that don't genuinely convey what the message is supposed to be. Text. I'm a bit OCD, so it means that every notification, sometimes every sound, I can almost hear it. But it's a problem. It's a good thing for my job, but it's a bad thing. Good for my job is because most of the time, with the teams that I have influence, we do our check-ins via text on WhatsApp. And what that does is in the morning, one of the first things I do, most of us, same here, some of you do meditation, some of you listen to music, there's something that you do, but all of us because of digital and technology, we check our phones. How many of us make it easier for our teams to check in with their phones? How many of you do check-ins with your phones? Yeah, like 2. But the rest of the conversations, alumni group, Malco, gossip channels. So you realize that the technology is there, but the mindset for it to solve a problem hasn't been activated. Next slide, please. One of the things that we have to understand and appreciate, the numbers justify this. Part of the reason why I'm in a company that's a telco, that's becoming a digital company, it justifies it. On the continent, there are more telephones than human beings. So for us to have a play in digital, we must have a mobile-first philosophy. So what does that mean? When you're sending messages, summarize. When somebody sends something to you that you don't understand, go back and ask for feedback. The reason why I'm saying this is, in our part of the world, we communicate, but we have a chance to co-create. Most of us are familiar with Microsoft. And one of the things that I find very fascinating is they've added a new feature called Copilot. Any of us know what it is? Please, for those who do, raise your hand. For those who don't. Okay, so there are a few people who do. I like Microsoft because most of us use Microsoft. I'll talk about, I typically use Apple, but I like Microsoft as a company. In the last 10, 15 years, Apple and Google have taken their lunch in terms of sexy and creative. But on enterprise, Microsoft is still king. Recently, with artificial intelligence, Microsoft can be a co-pilot with everything you do. So what that looks like is, you're building a website, you're creating a slide deck, there's a chat bot right next to you. And if you put in text-like instructions, the same way you would put in a text message to someone you love, to your messages, it creates a prompt. It can develop code. It can check code. It can give you suggestions. It can build apps. It can build solutions for you. The reason I'm sharing that is because most of us think of digital transformation as far, it's over there, it's not ours. It's happening now, and we can use it. And so part of that discussion that I wanted to tease out, and I told check me on time, I won't have the discussion, but at least the idea for you to discuss at today's conference, what are the practices, behaviors that we're doing now that allows you to be digital already? And that's one of them. Organization. I share this as really simple because a lot of us have files and folders. Some of us, we inherit files and folders from the company. So if you join a new company, they'll probably do onboarding pack, and then somebody will send you a link. This is our company files. Enjoy. Because of my OCD, I like to organize files and folders. The reason why I bring this out is now most of us are asking, how do we then get into this AI phase? How do we sort out our data properly? It's really by organization. Imagine if your files were organized in your division or department. Then the division's files were organized in that department or company. And the company's files were organized. What would that look like for data cost? What would that look like for added value for your data? That is digital transformation. I know the Harvard part is there. I know what David Rogers wrote is there. I know that the apps and the sexiness is there, but the basics are also there for us to do. And that's what I want you guys to take away from today's message. Next slide, please. I heard this phrase and I was really shocked, but I realized it's really true. Ruthless prioritization. So one of the challenges with digital is that we're supposed to give access, but at the same time, it's expensive to give access. Who pays for it? I'll give an example. In some countries, internet use, human rights, right? Here, you have to pay for data. Who pays for it? For most of you as project managers, the daily breakdown of those decisions at the big level is how do you prioritize? Some of you are prioritizing building an app or having a web page. Some of you are prioritizing owning your own data or paying for a server space. As project managers, the key to some of these is prioritization and the habit of doing it. With digital transformation, you can get caught up in a lot of infrastructure and a lot of nice things. A good example is photography. So I used to be a hobby photographer. After a while, you're waiting and begging for the newest Canon, newest Nikon. Same thing with some of you who have beautiful cars. I won't mention names. Now you have to decide which weekends you are driving which car, which day you are driving the other. There's garage rot. And same thing happens at that low level. So for those of us mid-level managers and lower, how do we create efficiency? It's by prioritization. Those little decisions, understanding what things do you need now, what do you need in the immediate term, and what can you live without over a period of time, but keeping a pulse on it. And this rule also finds itself when we're creating customer journeys on apps, when we're asking companies to adopt digital processes. Is somebody hearing what I'm saying? Excellent. Next slide, please. When Dubik was talking, I raised my hand because I had a question for him. I felt like he had almost had a preview to my slide before, because he wanted to get past the ECG part, which was kind of the first part of my slide, and get into the human aspect part of what it takes to be digital. The challenge with Dubik, and we play soccer together, is he's booga booga. So his language was like, Charlie, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to make it work. And a lot of it I agree. But the way to phrase it that makes sense for all of us is a win-win philosophy. So when he says that as ECG, by virtue of the utility of the app, he has access to most residents, it's quite true. But then it means for whoever he partners, there must be a win-win philosophy. It's not ECG that wins at our failure, or it's not us that wins at ECG's loss. And what does that look like? For those of us middle managers, instead of asking, what am I working on? Which he said was very selfish, it should be, what are we solving for? Instead of asking, what am I working on? We should be asking, what are we solving for? And that perspective is incredibly important. I'll give a perspective that most of you probably wouldn't realize, but that question came up, especially when we were doing imaging. And for some of the team members that I have that had a diverse group, we had team members saying that, hey, I'm working on, once you put in a query or search engine, you're going to see more people like me. Very studious people, brilliant people, paid very well, created a platform. Anytime you typed in black, guess what you saw? Or you saw white, guess what you saw? You saw a specific representation of what they were working on. What did that lead to? It led to a lot of people going on algorithms, searching for something, and us not finding ourselves in there. Why? Because they were asking themselves, what am I working on? They weren't asking ourselves, what am I solving for when somebody searches for black people, white professional, color code? Tactics aligned with overall strategy. So this is probably more the beginning of the slide than it is now. But for a lot of us as managers, we really get tunnel vision. And every now and then you need to ask yourself, what I'm building, what I'm working on, does it align with the overall goal? Does this make sense? Game plan is something that probably some of you use. You call it different things. Some people OKRs and others. But that winning together is so important. In the digital world, where you have a shared economy, you cannot build and win alone. And we see that with Uber services, we see that with platform services. We see that now with utility. The cost of being a lone player is too high. So you have to learn to win together. I mentioned a bit about network effects, but it speaks to the value of products and services when a large number of people continue to use it. And so I was really excited, hoping I could speak to Mahama about this. Anybody from ECG? For him, it's great for him to plug in to the number of utility services, because the more people we have, the more nuance we can give, and the more we have cost efficiency if we're sharing some of the platforms and services. I'm sure some of you know this by now, but we need to practice it in the digital space. I asked a few people what they want to get out of this, and they were like, hey, I need to know digital tools. And I said, okay. I was trying to predict that question in the slide. There are so many digital tools that this slide couldn't capture at all. I decided to pick a few of them. Some of you use OneDrive for shared files, analytics. I decided to put both WhatsApp and WhatsApp Business, because I think some people don't realize how apps change and their utility. And for most of you who are here, I don't know if I read it from the bio, if anybody has like a commerce or shop. A lot of more people use WhatsApp for buying and selling than they use a lot of the commerce and shops from our part of the world. So you have to meet people where they are. And that's what informed my previous company to work on WhatsApp Business. Bug tracking for Jira, Asana for collaboration. And as Mr. William Tete is saying, I would be remiss if I didn't mention MTN's Chinosis, our Africa API marketplace. And I'm sure there are so many more tools you are building. But this slide is to say we cannot build effective tools if we don't collaborate. And that's important for all of us. I put this quote, and I found a young picture of Steve Jobs, because most people find the old, balding Steve Jobs. This Steve Jobs still ran Apple. This Steve Jobs was still a millionaire. And a lot of times, we forget that innovation isn't just an old people's game. It's also a young people's game. And so hopefully next conference, there should be more millennials, there should be more Gen Zs. And this is why. Steve says technology is nothing. And that's surprising coming from the guy who made Apple. What is important is that you have faith in people, that they're basically good and smart. And if you give them the tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. And I want you all to think about that through digital. The people matter, the mindset matter, and if we create the digital tools, we can do wonderful together. Thank you. Ato.
There's a simplicity for me, but a depth that's deep. Yeah. Please, let's take some questions now. I'd allow for about 2 to 3 questions, and then we can move on to the next session, please. But again, it should be as engaging as possible, so as any time you want to interject, please feel free to do so. Yes.
Thank you very much. So for me, when I hear digitalization, I think about job losses.
Be scared.
So I know why I'm saying that.
Yep.
Today, where I work, 80% of transactions are done through the digital channels. That is EcoBank. Today, nobody goes to the branch. Just think, when was the last time you entered a branch? Last week. What did you go to do? Just tell me what you went to do. Change your password. You could have done that through the contact center. You could have done that through the ATM. You could have done that through the mobile app. You are not. No, there is a change of password. When we are done, come, I will show you.
Cyril.
Let me just even go far. You don't need to go to the branch to get your statement to apply for a visa.
Yes.
So I fear when it's digitalization. In your opinion,
Yes, Cyril.
how can we be abreast with digitalization?
Thank you very much. Luckily, I went to Presec, so I'm ready for the National Math and Science Quiz question. I'm an Odadie. So, the first point, actually, every time we talk about it, it's something that I don't shy away from. It's true. Anytime you say that you're going to optimize or you're going to innovate, you're disrupting. Disrupting is not kind, it's not generous, it's not benevolent. It's not looking to give you more. It's looking to do more with less. And that's the game we're playing every time we say we're in a profit-making business. So let's establish that fact. Digitalization is being made to seem like it's the roots of joblessness. The byproduct of that is industries are disrupted, and part of that is efficiency comes in because of digital adoption. Another way I would flip it, and this is why you saw on my other slide, even the informal one, I put it in there that I teach at Stellenbosch Business School on digital transformation. The thinking and mindset of work from our foundational level has to change. It hasn't caught up with the world of work and profit making. So to answer your question in a very simple way, the jobs that we have now mostly should have become redundant based on technologies abroad, but are not. And so there are multiple factors that we have to be responsible. The part that I would own, for us digital, one of the things that we like to say, and we're still working through that, is our S&D channels. So sales and distribution. We helped build a tool for them when we knew that scratch cards would no longer be something for that. It's our Minerva tool. What we're trying to do is now to teach every agent how to be part of the gig work economy. Why? Whether we do it, or Starlink does it, or Google does it, the world of work will become disrupted. If we do it, we have a win-win situation because we are incentivized that people use a platform, they would sell bundle purchase, they would sell value-added stuff that we want on it, and then it will be locally African and hopefully Ghanaian made. If they do it, none of those things matter. It will be profit-driven. So there are two prongs to that. One, it's education. For those of you who volunteer, I'm a Rotarian for 10 years, there's a part of giving back that has to happen. That has nothing to do with EcoBank, MTN, or your job. It's our responsibility and the mindset for the next generation. So I'm a bit of a third culture kid. Most of my sisters stay in the States. When I'm with my family there, technology and its use is incredibly different than when I'm here. So when I come here, I'm like, wow, it's a completely different world. Probably you don't even have to go there to do that. Dubai, Middle East, sometimes even South Africa, depending on when they have light on or light off. But that said, you realize that those forces are not ours. So we have to be, one, intentional. So that's what I try to do with the digital transformation journey. And we really have to invest in our people from the educational standpoint. There are new jobs also being created. And those jobs being created, unfortunately, because we haven't caught up, we're not benefiting. So I would say that yes, it's disruption. Yes, we must be intentional. And yes, we must invest in education.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Ellie Kim. I work with Hubers Africa, a real estate business.
Sharp.
So the basis, what birthed my company was wanted to provide proper data analysis. So in real estate in Ghana, when you want proper data, you are bound to have challenges. Example is with the flood situation in Ghana. When you want data as to, okay, here in Accra, where exactly, can you please give me a good idea, what is the flooding looking like? Everybody will tell you based on their experience, but when you want proper data, when you go to the right people, they have it, but it's not, they don't have to, scramble and then get it for you. And you realize that people, government institutions that do not want to jump onto digital because they're scared to lose their jobs. They're scared for some reason, I don't know. Is there a way we can make digital friendly? Because it's very problematic.
Yeah. So you had a loaded question. A couple of things that I would unpack really quickly for you. One, I always disagree with the term that we don't have proper data. So part of me is also an academic. There's an institute called Tyresha. It's out of this university. And we look at Africa's version of data and what that looks like, right? So there's a bias to written English data. About 70% of the internet is in English and is written. What that does is that anytime you have a startup or a company, you are plugging into that data and running with it. Creating primary data, for those who are academics here, is incredibly difficult and it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. So what you are saying is, it's not that there isn't proper data, there isn't collated data that allows you to access it that way. The challenge is somebody built it there, somebody has to build it here. Second thing also, you talked about government not wanting to because they're scared. I don't look at fear as a metric or proxy for management. Sometimes it can happen, but usually it's vested interest. Most times, and I think Dubik said that, his language is always very interesting, but what he was saying is if you're able to articulate a win-win situation, then you start to see that, okay, both parties come to the table. Usually funding is the big loss for most governments and companies. They can't justify why must we then convert this data set into something that's accessible. Another metric instead of fear I would use is trust. And a lot of governments are scared of that. When you hear about, and it's a real thing, data use by different companies, whether it's American companies, there's really this war between specific companies that house cloud computing, for example, versus local ones. And there's a debate around that. At our level, though, I'll say this. There's a lot of open source software out there, and there are lots of communities that help you bridge that gap between something the government has built and something that you, I want to say small to medium scale business. I don't want to insult your bottom line, but as an SME can afford. Some of these digital transformation budgets are large, and some of them are long term. The internet was a research project. It was long term. So when you say some of these things, that you want quality data to access addresses, what you're asking for is potentially a national or municipality project. It's not something for an SME that's in real estate. Maybe you want to access that part. So part of it is uncoupling that, understanding there's some NGOs that are already doing it. There was Ben that was trying to do blockchain and attaching that to it. That was one of the private companies, but in partnership with government. So at the early phase, before you absorb some of the sentiments, the fear metric as one, the bias of we don't have proper data, check around research and see what is ongoing and which parts of it may already be existing. Your job may probably be putting it together in a synthesized way, and some tools may be able to help. So I can talk to you offline for that as well.
Yeah, my name is Eli, ECG.
Yes, sir.
I think that my colleague here, or my boss,
Cyril.
Cyril, yes. He spoke about AI and job losses. I was listening to or watching a video a couple of days ago from this Google, I don't remember his name, it's one of the Google CEOs or somebody very high up in Google, who was very much responsible for this AI stuff that we are seeing today. And his fear was not about job losses, but his fear was about controls, about policies and things that will control how AI is adopted. So we danced. We felt the vibe.
Yes.
I've not been to Rwanda, but I have people who have been to Rwanda. And they see and tell me that they feel the vibe with how the government is involved in organizing, in giving visionary, propositions to how they want to teach dice.
Yes.
What's the vibe in Ghana? And what do you see from where you stand?
Good question. I like that question. I'll answer two things from it. First, there's a lot of hype about AI as an innovation in itself. There's a hype cycle, adoption, understanding what generative AI is. And there's also, for us to read it, usually a lot of people who report on tech give the best case scenario. AI can give you another wife. AI can take you to the moon. Those are the narratives that really, and I know I'm exaggerating, but really that's what they're saying. So when you really check what is happening, for example, when companies adopt AI and others, there's a lot of data that has to go in, and there's a lot of iterative work to make some of the promises happen. So tampering that a bit. The second thing is, the point about controls with technology, most times I say this, it's not the technology, it's the people who build and the rules we put in place. That's the problem. So a lot of times when my colleagues come out of this DeepMind, Project X, and we go into that, you come out and you realize the technology can't work on itself. It's the bias we put into it. And that's why today's presentation, the second part, you realize I didn't really talk about the big companies. I talked about how we work as a team. I talked about communication and checking for understanding. I gave examples about diversity. That's how we course correct some of these problematic tech. The vibe in Ghana is interesting. I think there was a workshop we were invited to on AI, just to understand Ghana's place, articulate a charter. There are two things I feel about it. One, I'm always worried when a government takes the lead on technology. I think it should be a cross-functional collaboration. Governments are meant to tax you and protect you, and sometimes they take the protect part very seriously and too seriously. If a government is leading the agenda on a tech, odds of you being able to democratize and have your share are very slim. I respect Paul Kagame and Rwanda, but there's a bias to not allowing liberty and dissenting opinions. So whatever project they have, that bias would inevitably filter through. Ghana, we're a little different. I think we don't have money. No crack in the crank, you know. What I will tell you though is this. Google launched the AI Center a couple of years ago. The promise of our engagements and others. And at the time that the AI Center was being put together, I was working with Esther Akofio-Sowa. So there are pockets of us in this country that are really doing great things, but it doesn't cross over to different divisions and departments. And I think a lot of speakers have mentioned that. How do we get that crossover learning? How do we get that absorbed? So with us, this is what I would say. In spite of our limited funding, we have influential people. They're Ghanaians in almost every major tech at NASA. They're Ghanaians in different halls of government. And we do well in articulating that. What we don't do well is having a united purpose. This is what we want. There's a Rome Charter for AI. My undergrad alma mater, University of Florida, is part. I'm trying to get University of Ghana and WITS so that there are African universities involved in that. A lot of times, sometimes you see these apps, every app you're using, but it starts from a white paper and a wireframe. And most times, none of us are part of that white paper or wireframe. So hopefully, we start to push so our representation then pushes the byproducts of those products. So that's the answer I can give for that. Thank you. Last question was that side? Or is it my own people? Please, then the question must be easy. This was, they've been asking me. Hey. Last question, please, for the lady.
From the presentations we've had so far, I mean, even yesterday we saw one where there was a digital transformation initiative with Ghana Police. I think all of us were very invested in the Ghana Police one. But then we realized that, like most companies that attempt a digital transformation journey, it doesn't quite stick, the first time at least. I've read a couple of articles, McKinsey and Co. They've done extensive studies and realized that a lot of organizations that attempt it, a lot of communities and societies that attempt it, at least the first time, second time doesn't really stick. So coupling that with project management, I don't know, how can we make digital transformation stick and work?
I love your question. I'll tell you why in a second. One of the experiments we used to have in my younger days was, how do you create like qualitative data? Maybe I'll translate it. Let me say how we shared it, then I'll translate it in different ways so that it resonates. So how do you take metrics that are arbitrary or feelings, and then you put a proxy to them? So when she says, how do you make something stick? That would look like, how do you create a resiliency measure for a project? Let me try and translate it into something. I hope it works. Academics, apologize if not. Qualitative versus quantitative. How do you take quantitative data, make it a qualitative measure? Because what happens is that once you create a proxy for resilience, and let's say the proxy for resilience is 5. The 5 says that this project, this initiative, this behavior has been adopted by everyone. When you test for it in 3-4 months, a year, you reach a 3 or 4, then you create tactics and say, hey, we don't have resilience in this project, right? Then you move forward with that. So that's a tactic that I've seen used in other places that I don't see being used a lot when we adopt not just digital transformation, but change management. We say we want to change things, but we don't measure for how that thing has changed. So we don't create a proxy for resilience. And it's difficult because everybody has entrenched interests. For me to change my hair, my mom didn't measure how long is it gonna stay. She's like, what's happening? I said, don't worry. My mom is a reverend, so I said, have you read Samson? She said, yes. Then I said, yes, I'm a strong man in my own house. I say it because some of these practices that we have, they're how we live, they're there. But as project managers, we don't quantify and say, this is what we're measuring. Innovation is really hard. It's expensive. Most of it, what you start off with, if you don't stay with it, you don't get the value add and profit. And so a lot of us are in an environment where when any of our margins, the first thing to go is innovation and the change management team. But the problem with that is if you don't innovate, your current cash cow would die. And the competition, all they're doing is innovating. So they don't have the bias of, oh, we're doing well today. Or we've done this here. This is how we've always been doing it. So it's a catch-22. So yeah, I think the easiest tactic I can think about is when companies are adopting digital transformation, look at proxies for things like resilience, staying, change, create ambassadors. There are whole playbooks around that. And recognize that it's hard. When we tell kids to go to university and others, or go to school, we don't say, oh, it's going to be easy. The exam is going to be fine. We realize that the learning journey is going to be hard. So what do? We support them. Some people do extra classes and tutoring. Some institutions even have enough deck. For those who didn't go to Presec, I apologize. I shouldn't try, eh? But what I'm saying is, in so many parts of change and growth, we scaffold for it. But when it comes to change management in our companies, innovation and digital transformation, we leave it to 5 people and the guy with braids. Please, I'm done. Thank you.
Let's appreciate. Please stay on the stage with me. Please stay on the stage with me. Yes. And let me invite the president of PMI Ghana to do this presentation.